In Ecuador, the government has declared a state of emergency after a presidential candidate was assassinated on the campaign trail. The candidate was known for speaking up against corruption. He was shot dead at a political rally in the capital. Fernando Villavicencio was not the front runner in the election, but had received several death threats.
Speaking to supporters in what became his last speech.
This democracy cost our lives. This country has cost our lives. We won't permit a new treason.
Presidential candidate Fernando Villavicencio was shot while inside a truck moments after leaving this rally, where he spoke about the dangers of challenging drug cartels and addressing the corruption gripping Ecuador. Authorities said at least 9 others were injured in the shooting. The gunman was reportedly killed by police.
We experienced a horror movie. 30, 40 shots were fired with machine guns, and we saw the wounded fall. I know there are some dead, and sadly, Fernando Villavicencio was assassinated.
Villavicencio had a long history of challenging those in power. First, as a journalist who exposed a corruption scandal involving the former president that landed him an 18-month prison sentence for defamation. And later, as a legislator in a National Assembly which was dissolved, triggering the presidential election. Villavicencio, who ran as a centrist anti-corruption candidate, ranked 5th out of 8 in the polls. As a candidate, he had spoken about receiving multiple death threats prior to his assassination. He's believed to be the latest victim of rising gang violence that has seen a string of assassinations that included a mayor and a parliamentary candidate.
I deeply regret the murder of Fernando Villavicencio at the hands of criminals. My condolences to his family and my solidarity with his followers and friends. Today, more than ever, we reiterate the need for a firm hand against crime.
While the vote will go ahead as planned, some candidates have now suspended their campaign events in the run-up to the election day.
Well, for more on that, I'm now joined by Natasha Lindstedt. She's the Director of Education at the University of Essex and an expert in South American politics. Now, Mr. Villavicencio was the latest victim of violence in Ecuador, but he wasn't the front runner in the presidential campaign. Why would he be a target of organized crime?
Well, he's seen as incredibly dangerous to those that are engaged in crime, corruption, violence. And he's been a very vocal critic of the links that he sees between organized crime and politicians, the military, the police. So I think here with this most recent horrible assassination, you also have the idea that they want to send a message to anyone else who does something similar. And this was something that also happened in Colombia in the 20th century. 5 presidential candidates were assassinated, clearly trying to send a message.
Now, Ecuador was seen as a rather safe country, but it's experienced an escalation in violence in recent years due to the foreign cartels' operations. How did it come to this?
Well, I think it probably started with the 2016 peace accord in Colombia, and then that moved the activity, all the illicit activity and violence and the drug cartel operations, which already had some base in Ecuador, more firmly in Ecuador. There were missteps also by the politicians from Correa to Lenin Moreno that were really problematic, getting rid of the surveillance of the coast, privatizing airports and ports, which meant that the state couldn't regulate the screening of smuggling activities, dismantling the justice system and the elite police force. These were all things that allowed the drug cartels to operate with impunity and to basically go unnoticed. And then things just sort of spiraled from there. You had COVID, which meant a lot more people were unemployed. So you had a lot more people that could be recruited. So we've seen the murder rate double in just 2 years. you have the fourth highest homicide rate in the region, and 1.4 million people have fled as a result.
Now, as we've heard in our report there, some other candidates have suspended their presidential campaigns. How is this playing into the hands of the cartels?
Well, it plays perfectly into their hands. They're trying to get people to be scared, and scared enough that they don't want to campaign, or that they could be potentially someone that could be bought off by cartels. We've seen this happen in other countries in Latin America, namely in the Colombian case that I've already mentioned. And that's where you see sort of this narco-statization of the state, where the state is bought off, becomes criminalized, and the cartels in the state are essentially working together because everybody is too afraid to challenge them.
Natasha Linster, the Director of Education at the University of Essex, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.